Hello, there were times I once thought love was everything. I believed that even if I met a poor man, if I had love, I could overcome anything. So when I was immature, I only saw love and pushed ahead into reckless marriage. At the time, I was working at a company after I graduated from a vocational college, and I went on a blind date that was set up by my coworker with her cousin. But that person became my husband. My husband is 4 years younger than me, and soon to be graduated from a medical school. I didn't know my husband's age until I met him in person. Of course, I thought he was the same age as me, because when I heard that he was in medical school, he would have attended university for 8 years. So I thought he would be either the same or older by 1 or 2 years. But after having conversed with him for a while, he seemed a lot younger. "Oh, I thought you knew because I saw your picture on my cousin's social media network, and I nagged her to introduce me to you." Of course, I thought that my cousin would have told you about my age, but I guess she didn't. Are you disappointed because I am younger than you? Even though I didn't see the person who I'd just seen as a man, as a boy, because I found out his age, but I couldn't help feeling a bit uneasy due to his age. So as we parted, I told him that it was burdensome to continue seeing him. He seemed to be very disappointed. I was sorry, but that day's blind date ended like that. I forgot all about that and was busy with work. One day, I was reorganizing photos that I took with my coworkers when we went on a trip together during the summer and saw a familiar name who left a comment on my social media network. It was my coworker's cousin with whom I went on a blind date. I wondered if it really was him, and I clicked and went into his social media network. Surprisingly, there were a lot of pictures of me that he scrapped from my coworker's site. But to other people, it would seem he got those pictures of his cousin, but I knew differently as all those pictures included only me. After that, I often visited his site, but got caught in a promotional event he set up for his visiting guests. "You have been chosen as the 2,317th visitor." As soon as I saw the pop-up message, my face turned red in embarrassment because I told him not to meet anymore because he was burdensome to me. Yet I got caught visiting his site, so I was dying of embarrassment. Then, I thought so many things to say as my excuses, whether I should write a comment that I visited his site by mistake, or I came by random, and it happened to be his. Excitations as if it was a miraculous happening, or should I just ignore it? I was skimming what to say. Then I saw that he left a comment on my site. "I've been waiting for you." I later found out that he left a comment on purpose, and he was hoping that I would visit his site and was waiting for me. Then he ingeniously thought of setting up an event, hoping that I would be chosen someday. He had set up to sew clothes in numbers, so there was a high likelihood that I would eventually be chosen. I was flabbergasted that he used his brain that was high enough to enter medical school to program his site in such an algorithm to catch me. Anyhow, because of that, my husband and I met again, and not too long later, we became a couple formally. But because of the age difference, I felt uneasy to expose my private life to my coworker, so I told him to keep it secret from his cousin. My husband also agreed with that. Thus, our secret dating started. Even though I had a boyfriend, I couldn't confess about it to anyone at work. So my coworkers who didn't know would often try to introduce their friends to me, which was very troublesome to me. Even my boss said that he would set me up with a blind date, so I really sweated a lot then. And that was also extended to my family. When I was of age to be married, my aunt on both my maternal and paternal sides insisted that I go on blind dates they set up. They seemed as if their life mission was to get me married or something. They were nagging at me so much that I had to confess that I was dating someone. Then they asked me who I was dating. What? A doctor? Oh my lord, sis. She is good at catching a guy. It seems you will get a doctor as your son-in-law. My aunt spoke as if I had won the jackpot in a lottery, even though I told her that he still was not a full-fledged doctor yet. But the problem was next. As soon as my father learned of it, he told me to bring him home. You are not young, so don't you have to think about getting married soon? A man must see by a man so to know what kind of guy he is. Right. I also want to see him, so bring him home. I'll do my best to cook up for a change, so when would it be good to set the date? Even my mom was nagging me, so I had to invite my husband over to our house. My dad set his future son-in-law down and started to interview him as if he was hiring him. What? How old are you? Are you saying that you are younger than Michelle by 4 years? If you are still a student, when will you do your internship and residency and become a doctor? Oh, I'm asking you just in case. You are not just dating Michelle and marrying someone else, are you? If you are, then don't waste time and break up now. I don't want my daughter to get hurt. Do you understand? Father, I'm not dating Michelle lightly. Even though I'm younger and it'll be a while to become a doctor, but I am sure. So if you give me your permission, I would marry her immediately. My parents were surprised at his sudden announcement. It was just to introduce him, and it wasn't to get permission to marry. However, my dad seemed to like my husband's definite stance and gave him his permission. However, we were suddenly faced to get married without anything properly prepared. We encountered an obstacle from the start. Honey, we don't even have a place to live. So how could we get married now? Your parents are having a hard time to even pay your tuition. So let's tell my father and get married later, okay? Why do you think it won't work from the beginning? We can live in my studio where I'm living now, and until I become a doctor, could you help me out by paying for our living expenses? When I work as an intern, the pay is little, but I could help out. In fact, when I start my internship, I won't be able to take time out to date you. Out of sight, out of mind. I worry that you might be taken by another guy, so I have been worrying about that. I want to be free of those worries by getting married first, so please help me out. Granted, it was when we were passionately in love, so I had no thought to oppose my husband. It was a matter of time before he went through internship, and after residency, he would become a doctor. So I did not doubt his future. so I decided that I should go ahead as my husband suggested. My in-laws weren't well off in the first place, and they were in debt trying to pay for my husband's tuition, so they weren't in any position to help us with our wedding expenses. On the other hand, I couldn't make my parents pay for all the expenses, so we started our newlywed in my husband's rented studio apartment. Thus, I didn't need to buy anything for the apartment. Everything was built in, and the space was too small. So after placing a double bed in it, we hardly had a space to sit. My husband needed to attend 3 more semesters before he graduated, so I had to pay my husband's tuition with the money I had saved and pay the living expenses out of my pay. For my husband's last tuition, we didn't have enough money, so I had to get a loan from my work. When my husband started his internship, I thought perhaps our financial situation would improve. At the East Shonan Medical Dramas, there was another force of politics in the hospital. To gain entry into the powerful group, one had to spend money on various things to catch the attention of the top management. As in any group or organization with a hierarchy, the indirect participation of the wives was important. As it was difficult to join the hospital after graduation, but it was even harder to be accepted into the inner circle. The wives who indirectly participated to help their husbands' careers did not have any weapons, but it was a survival of the fittest type of silent war. When I worked quietly at my company overnight, I was embroiled in such a fiercely competitive world to help advance my husband's career and had to actively support him. In that process, I got further and further into debt. Then I ended up asking for loans from my parents more often, and my husband and I began having arguments over money. Until how long do I have to keep supporting you? Why do I have to go to my parents for help? I couldn't even get any presents for them for Mother's Day or Father's Day. But how could I ask for another loan? But don't keep borrowing money from my parents, but try to ask your parents too. I can't do it any longer. It's too hard. I was too tired of it and finally blew up. My husband must have felt sorry about that and asked his mother. The next day, his mother called me. I heard from Sam that you nagged at him to get a loan. Since you paid for the tuition and the rest should be paid by us. No, Mother. There must have been a misunderstanding. I didn't say that. If you didn't say it, are you saying that Sam told me a lie? I haven't said it all this time, but you and your parents are so shameless. Go and ask anybody on the street. Is it easy to get a medical doctor as your husband? People say that you would set up a hospital, luxury brand foreign car, and so forth. But when you got married, what did you do for him? You just came empty-handed, and why do you make such a big fuss just to support your husband? If you were going to be that way, why did you covet a medical doctor as your husband? If it weren't for you, my son would have married into a family with money, and he would have no worries about money and living in luxury. You've blocked his future, yet how dare you complain just because you are merely paying for living expenses? What's so great about you? Are you young, or do you have any great educational background? You just have a diploma from a vocational college, And do you call that education? How could you not invest at least that much to take advantage of his successful career in medicine? If you nag at Sam once more for this matter, I won't leave you or your family alone. I'll get you divorced and have my son remarry someone else. Done that, but all that time, I have been paying my husband's tuition and taking care of him. But my mother-in-law was not even appreciative and scolded me that I had done nothing. Then somehow my husband's cousin, who is my co-worker at work, said, I'm not saying this because I am Sam's cousin, but honestly, Sam has graduated from a prestigious university and soon will become a medical doctor, but you are only a vocational college graduate. No matter who sees you, he has the upper hand. But just because you paid some of his tuition, how could you act like that? He's so busy at the hospital, yet how could you tell him to get money from his family? It seems you don't know, but no matter if things have changed, to get a husband who is a medical doctor, you should be prepared to spend money to buy a house, a luxury foreign car, and even set up a hospital for your husband. But what have you brought? Nothing? Then isn't it expected that you pay his tuition? Don't be hurt that I am saying this, but why don't you act after you take a look around you? How shamelessly you are acting? I'm saying it because I am worried about you. Don't think that I am criticizing you. She just poured gas into the fire. People are like that. Gangsters when other people corner you. Even though you did nothing wrong, you believe what others tell you as if you did something wrong. I was being like that. I felt I was being treated unfairly. But when people around me told me that I was shameless, I started to think I did something wrong. So after that incident, I never brought up any money talks. If I did, my parents and I would be scolded for it. Okay, I'll wait until you become a doctor. Then this shameful treatment will be the end. That's even though I had to struggle for money. I put up with it. After my husband finished his internship, he joined the army to get his residency easier. However, I had to pay the living expenses and loan payments by myself. After work, I had to get a second job to work in the evenings as well as over the weekend. Finally, my husband became a full-fledged doctor and started to earn a salary. However, with just his salary, it was not enough to pay back the loans we borrowed from my parents nor pay off loans I got. Still, I didn't have to worry over money than before, so I thought it was fortunate. Moreover, my parents told me that I could take time to pay back to them, so I started to pay off more urgent loans. Finally, I was able to pay off the bank loans and credit card loans since I didn't have to pay back my parents right away. I didn't have to work a second job. However, it was then something happened to my in-laws. What? Your father got defrauded. By how much money? I don't know exactly, but there is another problem more urgent. Honey, my dad didn't have money when he started his business, so he got a loan. But you know that my dad doesn't have very good credit. He was turned down for a bank loan, so he borrowed from a private loan and I co-signed it. Are you crazy? Why didn't you discuss that with me and do that? So how much did he borrow? About $400,000. At that moment, my heart dropped. I thought I had barely got out of the tunnel of long strains of debt. I felt like I was in a deeper tunnel than that. After I got married, I even deferred having a baby and did nothing but work night and day, including weekends to provide support for my husband. But now I even had to work to pay off my father-in-law's debt. I just couldn't believe it. I just sat on the floor and looked blankly into the air. Then my husband spoke weakly. "So why don't we get divorced?" I'm not saying we get divorced for real, but until this is settled, let's get a fake divorce. It's my family's affair, and I don't want to make you suffer. I feel bad enough for what you have done for me so far, but how can I ask you to pay for my father's debts also? After we go through the bankruptcy, as soon as it is taken care of, we can register our marriage again. So until then, go and stay with your parents. If you stay here, you'll be hassled by those loan shark people. I'm very sorry. As if he had a conscience, he asked me to stay comfortably and brought up the subject of a fake divorce. At first, as a people centurions, I refused, but my husband relentlessly persuaded me, so I ended up signing the divorce papers. But I'd been fooled completely. After I moved to my parents' house, my husband wouldn't answer my calls. At first, I thought he purposely cut off his contact with me because he was being hassled by the loan shark people, but it wasn't that. A coworker was acting oddly around me, and she cut me off from the following of my social media network. I was perplexed, so I went into other coworkers' social media network with my mom's social media network account and found that she went to my husband's wedding. It's his story that his father got defrauded and into a lot of debt was all a lie. He used the scheme to be divorced from me. What was more shocking was that my husband had been dating his new wife for a long time. In fact, when my husband was in the army, my coworker went with that woman to visit my husband. She knew that my husband was having an affair, but kept it secret from me. When I read the comments, my coworker even received a luxury brand handbag as a present from that woman. That woman was a daughter of the director of a hospital who was a divorcee. She had a 6-year-old daughter from her previous marriage. My husband went to her kindergarten event, acting as her father even. I had been completely fooled by my husband and his parents. Now that I found out the truth, I couldn't put up with it. I told the truth to my parents, and we hired an attorney and filed a lawsuit. My coworker tried to stop me, saying that the relationship was already broken, so just getting a large alimony would be better. Are you telling me to just go away and get the alimony? Why? I had to put up with all kinds of abuses to make that bastard into a medical doctor. So how could I end it for some lousy pennies? I'll make sure that not only that bastard, but the adulteress got a bucket of shit poured onto them. So don't aggravate me and get away from me, you opportunist trash. When you joined in that dirty act after getting the luxury brand handbag, did you like it? You're all the same trash as they are. Tell that bastard. I've nothing to lose, so I'll show him how dirty I can get just as much as they have to me. I got furious and screamed at her, and my coworker dropped a tail and ran away from me. Because of that, everybody found out. A few days later, my ex-husband's mistress came to see me. She had a snobbish look as if she did not commit anything wrong and talked to me elegantly. "I'll compensate you. Tell me what you want. I'll do it," was with her attitude. I became even more furious. She shouldn't have acted that way. She committed adultery with a married man who had a wife, and she continued having a relationship with him and even colluded to deceive me into a fake divorce. Yet, she didn't say one word of apology and just tried to negotiate her way out of it by throwing money at my face. How could you act that dirty and sneaky way and not even say one word of apology? You shouldn't act that shamelessly when you are nothing but an adulteress. You'll compensate? So how much money are you going to pay? $5 million? $10 million? If it's not that amount, don't play with me. If you make me mad, I'll go to your daughter's kindergarten and will say that you are the adulteress who had an affair with my husband. I wonder for how long you are going to act that snobbish. Do you think your life will be comfortable after you tear up other people's lives? I won't forgive you nor that bastard. It's not enough to tear you two apart. So put that head into mud and live forever being ashamed. Isn't it all about money? What you gave Sam was money, and the reason you're angry because you have lost Sam, who was about to make some money for you, isn't it? So I'll compensate that money, but what will you do if you got an apology from me? Will that improve your life? So I'm telling you that I'll give you money for your lost love, time, and money to be compensated. If you want to file a lawsuit, then go ahead. But you should know how money could influence greatly. If you file a lawsuit, I'll get help from my dad. It will hire the best law firm there is. Even though you are the victim, the court will not give you the judgment as you wish. History in this country, the law is not on the person who is mistreated, but on the side of the powerful people with money. So think carefully and decide. Even though it was unfair, what she said was true. My attorney said so. I was the one who voluntarily signed the divorce papers, and I have no proof that my husband lied to me to obtain the divorce. So all I could get was to file for damages against the adulteress for the interference of contractual marriage. And the compensation I could get was approximately $10,000 to $20,000 at the most. And if I said anything about the adultery at the child's kindergarten, I would be countersued for damages. Perhaps I hired a major law firm, then I would have to pay a tremendous amount for settlement, including attorney's fees. No matter what, I couldn't be healed from my hurt. So I decided not to file a lawsuit and just get compensation. Just with all the money I spent to pay for my husband's tuition and loans, including my parents' loans. I settled for $1 million more on top of the actual costs incurred to cancel the lawsuit. I left my work since rumors about me had spread throughout the company, so I couldn't go to work without feeling ashamed. I found out that my husband's cousin also quit the company. I received my coworkers' sympathies, but she was branded as a perpetrator, so she was treated as an outcast in the company by other women. I'm past and I became a building owner. purpose with the compensation I got from the adulteress. I began an online import business, which turned out very successful, so I was able to buy a building. My parents moved their restaurant to my building's lobby, and the second and third floors are being used as my company offices. But the fourth floor and the rooftop are being used by my parents and me as our residence. Even though I got betrayed by a man I trusted and became a divorcee, I turned out pretty successful. If I lived in the past, I wouldn't have today's happiness at all. I feel bad that I couldn't get my revenge, but it's not the end until it is over. So as Yogi Vera had said, my life wasn't over yet. It's my husband, who thought his life would advance after meeting a rich woman, became penniless and came to see me. I worked very hard at my father-in-law's hospital, but just because I had a small malpractice case against me, he kicked me out. And he wouldn't defend my case, so I became penniless to pay off the settlement by even selling my parents' house. Later, I found out that her family was very cutthroat people. And that woman was a big spender who spent money like water on luxury things and had a very strong personality, so I couldn't even breathe. She boasted about having some money and would treat me like her servant, so it was no wonder that her ex-husband was sick of her personality, so he practically ran away from her. I was crazy. I don't know what got over me and caused you to be so heartbroken. So honey, why don't we start again? We never had any problem except for money. You've made enough money now, so we won't have any more stress over money, right? You still love me, don't you? He was making me sick to my stomach. What are you saying? Pick up. Why would I take a dirty rag like you into my house? Even if you wash the rag, it's still a rag. Why do I need to accept you who is useless? Would you be able to earn any money when you caused a malpractice and lost your medical license? I know your personality is at its worst, so why would I trust you and take you in? So don't waste your time here and go and work somewhere to make a living. At your age, you wouldn't even get hired, but you have no reason to blame your ex-wife. She doesn't have an eye to see a man properly, but in a way, she's my savior. I almost embraced the trash for the rest of my life, but she even paid me $1 million to take away from me. So I'm very thankful to her. So don't come around here anymore. And please, get out of my sight before I call someone to forcefully drag you out. My husband sobbed and pleaded with me to rethink, but it was spilt like milk and I wasn't my old self any longer. Eventually, he got beaten up good by my dad, who ran over with a broomstick and finally left weeping. My dad and I got together for revenge unexpectedly, and that night we celebrated over fried chicken and some beer. Life is worth waiting to have a day like that. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope everyone will have a hopeful future and become successful. Please cheer for me and write your comments or wisdom in the comment section.